Hello, welcome to Heavenward Ministries. In this video, we'll be talking about the remainder of the Six Woes found in Luke chapter 11. Our previous video was on the first of the Six Woes. So, we continue reading in chapter 11 of Luke, verse 42. Woe to you, Pharisees, Jesus said, because you give God a tenth of your mint, rue, and all other kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone. According to John Calvin, quote, Christ charges the scribes with a fault which is found in all hypocrites, that they are exceedingly diligent and careful in small matters, but disregard the principal points of the law. Calvin goes on to say, quote, the pretended holiness of the scribes is compared with the sincere and pure feeling of charity here. And, quote, they paid tithes of garden herbs so as to make a display of extraordinary zeal for piety at the least possible expense. When we compare this verse, Luke 11:42, with its corresponding woe of Matthew as part of the seven woes of Matthew chapter 23, we see a slight difference. In Luke, the more important matters of the law are listed as justice and the love of God, and in Matthew, the more important matters of the law are listed as justice, mercy, and faithfulness. We can understand these more important matters of the law, as Jesus calls them, as the two tables of the law, or the two tables of the Ten Commandments. The first table of the law of the Ten Commandments, Commandments 1, 2, 3, and 4, the first table, the first four commandments, these are our obligations to God. This is our faithfulness and love of God. The second table of the law, consisting of commandments 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. These are our obligations to man. This is the justice and mercy, which Jesus refers to as the more important matters of the law. The second table of the law, justice and mercy, and the first table of the law, faithfulness and love of God. The two tables of the law, the two tables of the Ten Commandments. Let's look at the Ten Commandments found in the Old Testament. Number 1, you shall have no other gods before me. 2, you shall not make idols. 3, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. 4, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And this is the first table of the law, our obligations to God. 5, honor your father and your mother. 6, you shall not murder. 7, you shall not commit adultery. 8, you shall not steal. 9, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. 10, you shall not covet. And this is the second table of the law, our obligations to man. According to Bible scholar Albert Barnes, what is meant by justice is justice to others, as magistrates, neighbors, and citizens, giving to all their just dues. Mercy is defined as compassion and kindness to the poor and miserable. Faith means piety towards God, confidence in Him. Faith in God here means that we are to give Him what is His due, as mercy and justice mean to do to people, in all circumstances, what is right toward them. We see in the margin in the Thompson Chain Reference Bible, what this means is love is commanded of us. And this, my friends, is the sum of the whole Bible, love. This is all the law and the prophets according to Jesus. We read the greatest commandment found in Matthew 22:34. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like unto it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments, Jesus said. Moving ahead to verse 43 in the Six Woes of Luke chapter 11, Jesus said, Woe to you, Pharisees, because you love the most important seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces. The Thompson Chain Reference Bible brings to our attention in the margin that here we are talking about pride. And according to Bible scholar Joseph Benson, quote, here Jesus denounces the judgment of God against the Pharisees for their pride. Let's read what Jesus said about taking the lowest seat in Luke 14, verse 7. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, "Give this man your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honored in the presence of all your fellow guests. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. This is humility and this is love. We read in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, "Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud." And we remember what Jesus said in his Sermon on the Mount in the Beatitudes portion at the very beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. "Blessed are the poor in spirit," Jesus said, that is the humble, "for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Moving along in the Six Woes, the next verse we will look at, verse 44. Jesus said, "Woe to you, because you are like unmarked graves which men walk over without knowing it." Albert Barnes writes, quote, "They had no fairness but on the outside, so that those who walked over them did not consider what corruption was within." Let's look at the corresponding verses in Matthew, in the 7 Woes of Matthew. Matthew 23, verse 27. Jesus said, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." Moving along in the Six Woes, Luke chapter 11, verse 45. One of the experts in the law answered him, "Teacher, when you say these things, you insult us also." Jesus replied, "And you experts in the law, woe to you, because you load people down with burdens they can hardly carry, and you yourselves will not lift one finger to help them." According to John Calvin, quote, "Christ reproves the stern and rigid manner of teaching which was usually followed by those proud hypocrites who authoritatively demand from others what they owe to God." Moving ahead in the Six Woes, verse 47, Jesus said, "Woe to you, because you build tombs for the prophets, and it was your forefathers who killed them. So you testify that you approve of what your forefathers did. They killed the prophets, and you build their tombs. Because of this, God in his wisdom said, I will send them prophets and apostles, some of whom they will kill and others they will persecute. Therefore this generation will be held responsible for the blood of all the prophets that has been shed since the beginning of the world, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar and the sanctuary. Yes, I tell you, this generation will be held responsible for it all." Moving on to verse 52, quote, "Woe to you, experts in the law," Jesus said, "because you have taken away the key to knowledge. You yourselves have not entered, and you have hindered those who are entering." We compare this to Matthew 23:13 and the 7 Woes, the corresponding verses in Matthew, verse 13, quote, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to." Bible scholar Joseph Benson writes, quote, "In short, they did all they could to hinder the people from repenting of their sins and believing in the gospel. And in other words, according to Albert Barnes, by your traditions you have taken away the true method of interpreting the prophecies," Jesus is, in other words, saying. "You have given a wrong meaning to those scriptures which speak of the kingdom of the Messiah, and the people are thereby hindered from entering into it." Luke chapter 11, verse 53. When Jesus left there, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law began to oppose him fiercely and to besiege him with questions, waiting to catch him in something he might say. This concludes this video. Peace be with you.